Once again, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am Zak, the Corruption Detector, and this is another edition of Red Pill News. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're having a lovely day and that you've had a marvelous afternoon and evening as well. We've got some very exciting news to go over today. That's right. First of all, we're going to be talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell bail hearing, which was held earlier today. As I predicted, she has, in fact, been denied bail. She is a major flight risk, and with all of her international connections, there is a very high likelihood that she could slip away or be slipped away and Arkansided. We're also going to be taking a look at who exactly her judge is. I find it very interesting that her bail was denied by a former Obama appointee. That would be Judge Allison Nathan. We're also going to be taking a hard look at Andrew Weissman, the so-called pit bull for Mueller, and most likely the author of the recent op-ed Mueller published in the Washington Post. We're hoping that John Durham takes a long, hard look at him because he has a very storied history of breaking the rules and trying to put people in prison. We're also going to listen to a special message from Henry Davis. He's the president and founder of the Conservative Urban Project. He's going to tell us why he's voting for Joe Biden. It's a parody. And we're going to be taking a look at Joe's new platform, his bold plan he has unveiled to get our kids to market. What does that mean? I think I know what it means, but it really is unsettling when you think about the consequences of it. And finally, cancel culture is canceling itself. Due to constant bullying, a writer and editor from the New York Times has quit. That's right. They have been canceled themselves after taking part in the canceling. All right, guys, please, everyone, do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a very brief word from our sponsor. Noble Gold told me that this July 4th was special. Gold is up around 16% and the Dow has lost around 10%. And if you start a gold or silver IRA this July, you will get one of these, a 5-ounce America the Beautiful silver bullion coin with every qualifying IRA. To qualify, you must mention my name, RedPill78, and make sure you start the IRA in the month of July. Well, you can click the link below to visit noblegoldinvestments.com or call Noble Gold today at 877-646-5347 and make sure you get the ball rolling this July. Again, the link is in the description and the pinned comment to visit noblegoldinvestments.com or call them at 877-646-5347. Please tell them Red Pill 78 sent you to qualify for your free 5-ounce silver coin valued at $150. When you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today, let's take a look at Judge Allison Nathan. She was appointed by former President Barack Obama, and it appears that at one time in the past, she was an associate counsel to the president, Allison J. Allie Nathan. Now, she is married to someone named Meg Satterthwaite, and it looks like they have twin sons, Oliver and Nathan. So you've got Nathan, or maybe Nathan took the Satterthwaite last name. I don't know. That is a question for the ages. But here she is right here, and this is apparently a picture of her with the former president and those children. I believe this would be Judge Nathan right here. So, as an Obama appointee, you would expect that she would probably go easy on somebody like Maxwell, considering all of the blackmail material that Maxwell has. Well, there is a God, and we know it, and in the end, he wins, because today she was denied bail. Now, the judge determined that Maxwell is a substantial flight risk because of her wealth and her multitude of foreign connections. She's charged with conspiracy and perjury in a multi-state trafficking ring involving 3 unnamed minors between 1994 and 1997. Now, clearly, there were crimes committed outside of that window, but remember, there is that non-prosecution agreement that Jeffrey created with the federal government back when he was convicted in the mid-20aughts. Now, with this decision right here, Maxwell's bail request and her push for home confinement has been rejected. And now Judge Nathan specifically said that the British socialite accused of these terrible crimes posed too great a flight risk and should not be allowed to leave. Now, this entire operation happened this morning via video from Brooklyn, New York, and the Federal Detention Center, and prosecutors argued strongly against the release of Maxwell, added that if given the opportunity, she would likely use her collection of international passports and access to private transportation and money to run. They said there will be no trial for the victims if the defendant is afforded the opportunity to flee the jurisdiction, and there is every reason to think that is exactly what she'll do if she is released. Now, despite all of the crimes she is charged with, of course, Maxwell pled not guilty, and her attorneys have attempted to put as much distance between her and the case against Jeffrey as possible. They argued that the risks associated with CV-19 inside the detention centers, along with the $5 million bond, should have been enough to secure her release. Now, during the 2-hour hearing this morning, they also proposed that Maxwell serve her pretrial detention in a luxury Manhattan hotel. Her trial has been set for July 2021, and it's expected to last about 2 weeks. Now, if they're worried about the coof, just give her a mask, because that's what they're telling all of us to do out here. I think as long as Maxwell is under the watchful and attentive gaze of the military police and the DOJ, she's gonna be fine. Keep giving her those paper pajamas, and there won't be any possibility of her to end this quicker than is necessary. It is absolutely paramount, my friends. I know I'm speaking to the choir, but we must make sure that Maxwell makes it to July 2021, because in this instance, if her victims are denied justice a second time, it will be, as I said earlier, the second greatest travesty of justice ever recorded in American history, with the death of Jeffrey last year being the first. Now, with renewed interest in the Jeffrey case and with the Ghislaine Maxwell case, inevitably people are coming out of the woodwork to say that President Trump and Jeffrey had this pre-existing relationship. I have stated numerous times on this channel, just because the president or Ivanka's phone number was in Epstein's black book, it does not mean that they had a close association. Quite literally, that black book is made up of every single person that Epstein ever got a business card from. What you want to look for is people who have 5, 10, 15, 20 phone numbers in there, because that means that Jeffrey needed to get a hold of them anytime he wanted, and he needed constant access to them, probably because he needed them to do whatever he was asking based upon the blackmail information he held on them. Now, from Army of Frogs here on Twitter, we have this clip from July 12th of last year, where President Trump clearly lays out his relationship with Epstein and what happened those many years ago when he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago because there was a report of him abusing a young girl, a child of someone who was a member at the club.
I was not a fan of Jeffrey Epstein, and you watched people yesterday saying that I threw him out of a club. I didn't want anything to do with him. That was many, many years ago. It shows you one thing, that I have good taste, okay? Now, other people, they went all over with him. They went to his island. They went all over the place. He was very well known in Palm Beach. His island, whatever his island was, wherever it is, I was never there. Find out the people that went to the island. But Jeffrey Epstein was not somebody that I respected. I threw him out. In fact, I think the great James Patterson, who's a member of Mar-a-Lago, made a statement yesterday that many years ago I threw him out. I'm not a fan of Jeffrey Epstein.
President Trump, not a fan of Jeffrey. President Trump threw him out of the club. President Trump may have been photographed with him, but Jeffrey was photographed with a lot of people. He was a collector of people, of the rich and famous. He wanted to use them in any way that he could, whether it was through blackmail or just by association. Now, I want you guys to keep this in mind. Anytime someone on the left, on Twitter, on other forms of social media, comes to you and shows you a picture of President Trump and Jeffrey. Also keeping in mind that when Jeffrey Epstein was having charges pressed against him in the late 2000s, President Trump went on record as the only person who wanted to offer up as much information as possible. They did not need to depose him. He called the prosecutor and he gave them all the information that he could possibly muster. President Trump was the only one who was forthcoming. Why? Once again, he had nothing to hide. The key to Jeffrey and his associates is in those flight logs and not in the black book. All right, next, a former attorney for President Trump has spoken out about John Durham's investigation, telling him he ought to take a hard look at Mueller's pit bull, Andrew Weissman. Andrew Weissman has notoriously been a federal prosecutor who has withheld exculpatory information from his defendants, and there have been several times he's been caught in the act. Now, for as long as the investigation has been going on into President Trump, we have reported that it's been an obstruction of justice trap. We showed text messages from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page showing that Mueller's special counsel in its first month was already working on an obstruction of justice trap for President Trump to fall into. It was an operation designed simply to get some type of a guilty verdict for President Trump. They knew as soon as this investigation started that there was absolutely no collusion. However, they pursued their investigation in an attempt to take down the innocent president of the United States. This is the modus operandi of Andrew Weissman. In less than a month after the Mueller special counsel was created, the gang working for it already was working on their obstruction of justice efforts to entrap the president. The text messages, which were eventually released between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, despite their best efforts to hide them by deleting them or destroying their phones or wiping them, they showed that the investigation itself was simply designed to try to catch the president in a crime. They knew he hadn't committed a crime, so in order to get a guilty verdict, they had to help create a crime. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were talking to each other, and they were mentioning the fact that their obstruction of justice team brief had just come in. Now, this is as soon as the investigation started. How could there be any obstruction of justice if there wasn't even an investigation yet to obstruct? Now, the conversations between them clearly demonstrate the fact that this Russian collusion investigation was a sham. It was a setup from the very beginning. The deep state, the team working for Mueller in his investigation, were betting hard on President Trump obstructing their criminal investigation. Why? Because they were so used to that happening in Washington, D.C. The thing about the president, though, is that he knew he had done nothing wrong. There was absolutely nothing for him to obstruct. They have looked, they have sought, they have bought their microscopes and pulled them out at every turn, and there is nothing for them to investigate. They can't find a single crime. That's why they had to go after Stone, Manafort, Papadopoulos, all of these people for process crimes. They trapped them into getting some type of a guilty verdict. And thank God President Trump gave that commutation to Roger Stone, because the entire investigation should never have taken place from the very get-go. Now, what's even more shocking is that after the release of the Mueller report came out, Andrew Weissman admitted that he and the people on his team had been working to ensnare President Trump in a perjury trap. And why would they do that? Because it was the only way they could remove him from office. This is one of the most corrupt political scandals in modern American history, if not the entire history of the United States. Now, after that commutation came out, Weissman, Mueller, former Assistant Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, they all came out of the woodwork and they all had things to say. They did not approve of President Trump's commutation. Now, President Trump's former attorney John Dowd has called on John Durham to investigate the crooked Andrew Weissman. I have to believe that as part of his investigation, the investigation of Andrew Weissman is a no-brainer. There is definitely going to be some stuff in there about him. Now, the statement from Weissman in the wake of that commutation was that the grand jury would want to find out what Roger Stone knows about President Trump. And John Dowd has said that it is time for Weissman to be investigated. He said Weissman and his dream team failed in their first attempt to manufacture a crime and want to further abuse the process when their sorry effort has been exposed. The Stone indictment did not allege a crime by President Trump, so why further abuse the process except more sour grapes? Mr. Durham ought to take a hard look at Mr. Weissman's conduct on the Dream Team. And I say, why stop there? Go ahead and look at Andrew Weissman's conduct going back years and years and years, all the way to Enron. He has a long history of manufacturing crimes against defendants so that he can attempt to put them away. He is the absolute darkest possible timeline version of a U.S. attorney. He has prosecuted people in such an unfair manner. It is clear that he has no care about truth or justice. All he wants is results, and he wants the people he is charging to go to prison for as long as possible. Andrew Weissman should never be allowed to practice law here in the United States again, and I hope that John Durham takes these words and heeds them. Andrew Weissman needs to go down. Now, before we talk about Joe Biden, a little bit of levity from Henry Davis here on Twitter. He says, I'm voting for Joe Biden and not real Donald Trump in the 2020 election. Hashtag go Trump or cry. Let's go ahead and see what Henry has to say about this. Why would he be voting for Joe Biden?
I'm voting for Joe Biden because he was Barack Obama's vice president. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he likes to walk up behind women and grab them by the neck and shoulders. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he likes to sniff little girls' hair. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he's been in office for over 43 years and ain't done a damn thing. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he don't know the difference between his wife and his sister. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he has no damn clue where he is half the time. I'm also voting for Joe Biden because he cannot write his own speeches. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he can't remember his own name. Oh, I'm also going to vote for Joe Biden because he supports Black Lives Matter, the communist organization. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he's going to make everybody in his family rich and they ain't got to do a damn thing to do it. And I'm voting for Joe Biden because I think Donald Trump is going to kick his ass. Biden. 2020.
Oh man, I love it. Oh, it's so great. All very compelling reasons why liberals are going to vote for Joe Biden. Can you imagine knowing all of this information about Joe Biden and still thinking he's a viable candidate come November 2020? Thank you so much, Henry, for that little bit of levity. I appreciate it. And I want to make sure that if anyone out there is considering voting for Joe Biden, you know all of these little tidbits. Each one on their own would be a good reason to not vote for him. But in totality, all the better. Need another reason not to vote for Joe Biden? Well, here it is. He has unveiled his bold new plan. What is it? To get our kids to market swiftly. Do you think that was a bit of a Freudian slip? I think so. On Tuesday, he held another anemic campaign event in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, he rarely leaves his Delaware basement, and when he does, he tends to stay close to home because he's feeble, he's scared, but we gotta cut him a little bit of slack, right? He's a 77-year-old creep. I think not, but he unveiled this bold new plan to get kids to market swiftly. What does that even mean? To quote Joe Biden, he said, "To get our people to work and our kids to school safely, to get our kids to market swiftly, to power clean energy revolution in this country, we need to modernize America's infrastructure." This man is sick. He still cannot string together a sentence even though he's reading from a teleprompter. What is going on with him, and why do the Democrats continue to push this garbage upon the American people? Do they honestly believe that a majority of this country think that Trump is that horrible of a person, that the better option is to vote for this feeble-minded person? Oh, Lord, I am just in shock on a daily basis.
To get our people to work and our kids to school safely, to get our kids to market swiftly, to power a clean energy revolution in this country, we need to modernize America's infrastructure. To get our people to work.
That was a Jeb Bush please clap moment. He was expecting people to probably erupt in uproarious applause, but it didn't come because he said we need to get our kids to market swiftly. Why are you saying that, Joe? Why do we need to get our kids to market swiftly? Maybe you need to get kids to market swiftly. Maybe your cronies in the swamp are interested in something like that. Maybe you need to take a holiday to Saudi Arabia and Wonderland, but not us, Joe. We are not interested in getting kids to market swiftly. We are interested in ending those markets. And finally, in the most ironic story of the day, Bari Weiss, a writer and editor for the New York Times, has quit after experiencing constant bullying. She ripped her former employer, saying, "If you speak your mind, you'll be hung out to dry." Well, welcome to Democrat America. Bari Weiss was formerly a staff editor and writer in the New York Times opinion section, but she resigned earlier today. And then she scorched the liberal paper of record and its condoning of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views, and an environment where she said self-censorship has become the norm. Sadly, she is squarely on the mark. Now, Weiss put out an open letter which addressed the New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger, opening with the fact that after President Trump was elected in 2016, the paper hired her in an effort to understand the perspective of the 60 million plus Americans who voted for him. And the letter was fierce. She said the lessons that ought to have followed the election, lessons about the importance of understanding other Americans, the necessity of resisting tribalism, and the centrality of the free exchange of ideas to a democratic society have not been learned. Instead, a new consensus has emerged in the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, that truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job it is to inform everyone else. She is 100% correct. This is their 4 a.m. talking points. And if you diverge from the accepted narrative, you are thrown out with the trash. She said Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor. As the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper itself has increasingly become a kind of performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. I was always taught that journalists were charged with writing the first rough draft of history. Now history itself is one more ephemeral thing molded to fit the needs of a predetermined narrative. How correct she is. Now, Weiss continued that she has taken endless abuse for her views, writing, "Some coworkers insist I need to be rooted out if this company is to be a truly inclusive one, while others post axe emojis next to my name. Still, other New York Times employees publicly smear me as a liar and a bigot on Twitter with no fear that harassing me will be met with appropriate action. They never are." To the publisher, she said, "I do not understand why you have allowed this kind of behavior to go on inside your company in full view of the paper's entire staff and the public. And I certainly can't square how you and other Times leaders have stood by while simultaneously praising me in private for my courage. Showing up for work as a centrist at an American newspaper should not require bravery. The paper of record is more and more the record of those living in a distant galaxy, one whose concerns are profoundly removed from the lives of most people. This is a galaxy in which, to choose just a few recent examples, the Soviet space program is lauded for its diversity. The doxing of teenagers in the name of justice is condoned, and the worst caste systems in human history include the United States alongside the bad guys in Germany in World War II. A Times spokesperson sent Vice a statement from Kathleen Kingsbury, acting editorial page editor, which said, "We appreciate the many contributions that Bari made to the Times opinion. I'm personally committed to ensuring that the Times continues to publish voices, experiences, and viewpoints from across the political spectrum in the opinion report. We see every day how impactful and important that approach is, especially through the outsized influence the Times opinion journalism has on the national conversation." Wow, completely detached from reality. The New York Times, as described by Bari Weiss, is spot on, but the New York Times itself clearly seems to be existing in a bubble. They have no concept of what the American political spectrum is. As Bari said, if you are not adhering to the prescribed narrative, then you are cast out with the garbage. It is an absolutely disgusting display. The New York Times is one of the worst rags in America at this time, and whatever journalistic integrity they had at one time in the past, it has long been discarded. If you want to read the full text of Bari Weiss's letter, I will be leaving this link with the letter in the pinned comment below this video. I highly suggest you read it. I think that the thing that is really sad about this is that with Bari Weiss leaving the New York Times, they are inching closer and closer to a fully 100% leftist publication with absolutely zero wiggle room for other opinions. Right now, the New York Times does set the national dialogue, at least among the left. left. But we here on the right look at the New York Times as a shining example of what not to think and how not to behave. Very, very sad day for journalism here in America, if you can even consider the New York Times to still be among the journalists. All right, guys, that is all that I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am Zak the Corruption Detector, and this was another edition of Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, one more thing. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has supported the channel. If you're interested in doing more, there is always links in the description below. I have the merch store. Of course, I also have the backup channels. Please subscribe to those. If you take a look up here, you're going to see a couple of other videos. There's also a spot to subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. And if you are subscribed, I ask you to please check and make sure that you're still subscribed and your notifications are turned on. Thank you, everybody, for watching the program, and I will see you tomorrow.